Okay, it is Wednesday. My name is Geoff Ginter. I'm with Real Progressives. My apologies for those that showed up at 8 o'clock and we started and then we had to stop. We had some technical difficulties. My apologies, but hopefully it's all worked out now. Tonight, I'm joined by a very special guest. His name is Michael Weiss. He is running in Nevada's 3rd Congressional District. Tonight we're going to be talking about a lot of different things, but in particular about autism awareness. We're going to be talking about mental health stigma. We're going to be talking about how these things affect not just the individuals, but the communities and the country at large. So I want to welcome Michael. Thank you so much for joining me today. I really enjoyed talking with you in the past, and I'm really looking forward to what we can talk to the people about today.
Well, thank you very much for having me.
If you wouldn't mind starting off, let people know just a little bit about you, about your campaign, a little bit of personal background, and what you hope to accomplish for your constituents in the country at large.
Certainly. Well, I am running on a progressive platform heavily inspired by Bernie Sanders. I support a living wage of at least $15 an hour, free college tuition, Medicare for all, full civil rights for the LGBTQ community, descheduling marijuana, and you can read all about my policy positions on my website. And what makes me unique is I am running for Congress, and I am also on the autism spectrum. And people have asked me, where did my passion for politics come from? Why did I want to get involved with this process? And it actually kind of a sad story, but I was bullied substantially as a young child by my peers. And back then, bullying was seen as a rite of passage. What we now know about what we now know about the detrimental effects of bullying were not even considered. When I was going to school, and it was for just being different, for walking differently, talking differently, thinking differently. All those things just singled me out for this verbal and physical abuse. So because of that experience, I wound up studying sociology. I have a master's degree in sociology. I work in information technology, and I learned, substantially that there's a lot of, hatred and discriminatory, practices that are ingrained in our society against people who are different from those that are wielding power. Absolutely. And so when in 2016, I found, Bernie. I was a volunteer for Bernie Sanders, and excellent. He was so inspirational to me because he actually, made me, he made me see what this country could be. He fully recognized, what this country had become. But, until him, like certain things that I never thought were possible, certain things that were, good for humanity, like healthcare and education for everybody. Absolutely. That was a possibility. And then after the outcome of the 2016 election, which I was not happy about, it occurred to me that the 2016 election, kind of all the rules about politics and who could run, who could win, the role of money in politics, ideas, like all of that was taken for granted. I felt went right out the window. Yeah. So I just, after talking with some of my friends, and, this is something I'd wanted to do for quite some time. I was been somewhat politically engaged since I was 6 years old. And I thought, maybe a 35-year-old IT guy who works in information technology on the autism spectrum, who's never run for office before, might have a shot. Because I think 2018, if there's going to be a year of the outsider, it's going to be this. And part of what I am trying to do, as part of my campaign, in addition to, ensuring, that Nevadans, have health care and education and are paid fairly and civil rights and equal rights and all of that, I'm hoping that my candidacy, my campaign, will inspire people who have felt that they, have no chance of running for public office, whose voice has been silenced by our political process. I hope that they will, be encouraged to run, to participate, to recognize that everybody deserves a seat at the table. And finally, I'm hoping that my candidacy will also shatter some stereotypes that there are about autism and mental health, and help people recognize that having a neurological difference. I don't say disorder. I say difference.
Absolutely.
Not all bad, and in many ways, can have good aspects too.
Sure. Yeah. What's interesting, I've read your platform, and I love your platform, and we can talk about that more. Absolutely. But one of the things you just said that really strikes a chord with me is inspiration. To be an inspiration, and I mean that in a much more broader sense than your specific possibility of inspiring others with mental differences. To inspire them, to rise, to the occasion, to rise to their full potential, which is their birthright. But every 2 years or every 4 years, if you're really not engaged, we have to decide between a small group of people, who are we going to send, and what do we always hear? I don't know about these guys. I don't know this. I don't know that. And they never say, I don't know about the issues. It's always the people that are running. And we did not have, regardless of what you think about the 2016 election, I don't think anyone can say that we did not put up two very unlikable candidates. Clearly not universally unliked. I don't mean to imply that at all. But when you look at their unfavorable numbers, we'd never had such a clash of unlikable titans. And
the two most unpopular political candidates to run for public office in the history of the United States,
and we can do so much more than that.
Polling candidates.
360 million people in this country, and we can't do better in terms of inspiring one another. And we should be doing that on a regular basis amongst ourselves. To inspire each other. Ask anyone that is a member of a team in any way, shape, or form. You say hi. You get engaged. Someone is feeling bad. You say, how you doing? We should be rising above the old me, make myself look good at the expense of who knows, and rise together as a team. We could be doing that individually, and wouldn't it be nice to have someone who's running for office for whom you actually got excited about, as opposed to, well, I can't possibly vote for that other one, so I guess I'll have to vote for you. How is that acceptable in 360 million people?
And that's what we are trying to overcome here. I just did a table out in Boulder City, which is in District 3, and it's typically seen as a more Republican area. But I did a table out there, and I went ahead and talked to people anyway. And I've talked to, and we're going in places where, some of my opponents have not even touched, like in the more rural areas of District 3.
Absolutely.
We're going to Laughlin soon. We've Searchlight and all that. And I think one of the things that has been, it's nice and it's kind of sad at the same time. When people talk to me, and I spend some time with them, they leave with the impression that I actually give a damn. That, I'm not, I'm actually interested in what, they have to say. And also because I'm not taking corporate money, because I'm not, taking any PAC money, I'm just taking individual donations. I think that helps breed, some trust, with me.
How could it not?
Yeah. And I also think that, because, when they asked me about my story, that I have a personal stake in a lot of, these issues, especially with healthcare. Now,
absolutely,
when I say that I'm going to fight for something, that comes off far more genuine. And if anybody goes to my website or the Facebook page and watches any of my videos, I make it very clear when that if I leave somewhere after giving a speech or something, and people have no idea what I've stood for, I've done something completely wrong. And I'm proud to say that, whenever I've been to an event, given a speech or whatnot, and people may not agree with me, people may hate me, for that, but they never leave with doubt about where I stand on certain issues.
Absolutely.
And even just that by itself, we've even gained some respect from those on the from those that are not Democrats, those that are on opposite end. Just basic honesty. And what a novel idea that a politician would be honest and genuine. That's one nice thing about being on the spectrum. And my girlfriend, who may be watching right now, will vouch for this. It is nearly impossible for me to lie. It's just it's part of how it manifests. Part of how it manifests itself, And I don't see that as necessarily as a deficit in any way, shape, or form. I think there needs to be.
No, it's not.
So
it's not, especially in this day and age. Honesty is so important. One of the reasons that people are so pissed off at politicians, myself included, I think I've proven myself to be very pissed off at politicians, is the lying. You say one thing on a Monday, but come Tuesday, in front of another crowd, you espouse something different. And when it comes time to voting legislation and writing legislation, you've sold everyone out. We have to get back to basic decency. What kind of a country do we want to live in? Are we all in this together, or is it every man for himself? And if it's every man for himself, give up the pretense. Just come out and say it. But if it's we're all in this together, as we should be, then let's do that. Life is for living. And if you're not willing to live, then get on with it. But if you are, get on with it and do something valuable with your life. And there's nothing more valuable than service to your community. I'm convinced of that more than ever.
Furthermore, and I've said this before, and this is a criticism that we get as progressives, and that is that, they'll say that we are trying to somehow engineer or guarantee outcomes for individuals and I tell them, this is not about that. This is about opportunities. We can have, somebody, be given, an opportunity and still, screw things up. But
absolutely,
we're not even giving people the opportunity. You're born into poverty, in this country, you're screwed effectively. Yeah. And we make it, nearly impossible for, those that, have no wealth to get wealth. And we also, make it very easy for those that have already attained wealth to keep it and get more and more and more. And then pass it on to their kids, and they pass it on to their kids. I mean, when I tell people, I tell people, what's the quickest way to get rich? Have a family member who is already rich pass away and have it give it to you. That's how you do it.
Yeah, that's how Donald Trump did it. He got himself a wonderful little care package from his father.
And people still, miss that. It's like he didn't build his real estate empire. He inherited it from his daddy.
Absolutely. I'm not just saying that he did not have bold vision and do things bold, but there's bold good, and then there's bold morally bankrupt.
Yep.
But I want to be clear here while we're talking about poverty. For myself, and I only speak for myself, there is nothing wrong with riches. There is nothing wrong with poverty. There is something wrong with what you do with riches, and there is something wrong with a system that keeps you in poverty.
Absolutely.
It's quite possible that you can do things well, and then you hit bad times, and you fall into poverty. That's fine. That's life. That's the cycle. What's wrong is a system that demands that once you're there, it's a slippery slope all the way to the bottom, and you can't get back up. That's wrong. I don't want to have a wage war on poor people. I want to wage war on poverty.
Yes.
Not to eradicate it, because you can't eradicate it. Even Jesus himself said there will always be poor people, but I'm convinced. But you can
still guarantee that, they're not going to go without health care, for example.
Absolutely.
That they can have a place they can still have 3 hots and a cot.
But that's the point, of making sure that poverty is not systemic. It's not a lifelong condition. And we can do that if we did Medicare for all, single parent health care that included everything, womb to tomb, right there. That is one of the major causes of bankruptcy and homelessness. Gone. If we do a federal jobs guarantee, that is the other major cause of homelessness and bankruptcy. Gone. We're talking about just two programs right there. And we have seriously taken a chunk out of poverty, systemic poverty. And top off education on top of that.
Yeah.
Sky's the limit.
And also, since you mentioned at the beginning, about stigma, and related to mental health. I mean, I don't know what the percentage is of those that are in poverty that have, undiagnosed or untreated, mental health issues. They don't even have the access to get diagnosed. They don't even have, the ability to do so. And then and this is across all income levels, the stigma that's associated with mental health, the impediment.
Even amongst the poor.
Yeah, the impediment.
Even amongst the poor.
The impediment of, even just seeking out treatment for fear of being stigmatized. I mean, just so like inhumane. And going back, like what you said about, education. There's so many people that, when people think about autism, I actually had somebody, I told them I was on the spectrum, and the first thing they said to me was, "So do you bang your head against the wall repeatedly?" Like, that is the view of what autism is, for many people. It's like self-injurious behavior, lack of eye contact, nonverbal, or anything like that. They rarely consider. It's now recognized that persons that are on the spectrum can be very passionate, very intelligent, in certain areas. Do things with diligence in the ways that those not on the spectrum can. Very logical thinking, can see things that others can't see. Create creativity. I mean,
absolutely.
There tends to be a level of. I have found in the people that I have met, there tends to be a level of, I don't want to say social awkwardness, but just like differences in social interactions. But what makes it worse, what it seems to exacerbate, how these symptoms manifest itself, is how people perceive them. It's how the outside world, treats those, that are different. And I think part of what I hope with the coverage of expanding the coverage of mental health will improve access and all that, but I hope it also will at some point recognize, like, okay, if somebody's having an issue, you don't need to treat them like crap. Well, it should help them get better.
And that's the deal. We don't have stigmas for physical health. If you've got the flu, we may say stay away, but we don't find that we're stigmatizing you. If you have cancers, we go, oh, we pull you in, But if you say that you have depression, even,
it depends on whether people think that you caused the physical illness.
Well, there's certainly diabetes and things like that.
Absolutely. Yeah, HIV, for example, is a physical illness, and it is still quite stigmatized, regardless of how the person may have contracted it or not.
Or even if they didn't contract it through, sexual contact, as soon as you have HIV, it's in the back of your head.
Right.
You say you got it from a blood transfusion? Yeah, right.
But even so, it doesn't mean that we should be depriving, HIV, cancer, whatever, any,
absolutely,
that's, of treatment. Yep. And it's just not necessary. I'm for reforming, how we deal with opiate addicts. We need better access to treatment, centers. We need to, be treating, those with addiction, issues, a humane fashion, and all that. And well, I go on a whole rant right now about the pharmaceutical industry and overprescription of painkillers. But we only got a half hour left.
Absolutely. But even on the subject of addiction, one thing that I would like to have addressed, tonight and every night through in our future, is the differences that we see addiction. Like right now, the opioid addiction, and I want to make absolutely clear, it is terrible. Mm-hmm. It is horrible. There are literally millions of people in this country that are affected, whether directly because they do have an addiction, or their family, or their neighbors, their loved ones. It's absolutely horrible. Yeah. But we're calling that a mental health crisis. We're calling it a healthcare crisis. But other types of addiction, we're all criminalized. We'll criminalize marijuana, for God's sakes, and of course crack and cocaine, and all these other things. But the propensity.
I'm very much for. I will be signing HR 1227, the Scheduling Marijuana Act. I mean, we legalized it here in Nevada, and for recreational and medicinal. Yeah. And Jeff's. I actually made a video on Facebook. If you want to take a look at it, it's me sit next to a giant bong, basically slamming Jeff Sessions. And I do not indulge. It was just there to make a point.
Yeah, it's okay. It's okay. But we have done incredible damage to our nation, to entire generations of families by criminalizing marijuana, and treating addictions as criminal behavior. And as soon as
the private prison industry gives the private prison industry a lot of money.
Exactly. But yeah, and which brings up to the question of what is government for? What are we supposed to be there for? And in my opinion, if it is a public good, you cannot be allowed to make money off of that. So healthcare is a public good, it's a public trust. You cannot make money off of that, or at least profit. You should be able to make a good living, but it should be funded by the only, institution that can do that, and that's the federal government.
Yeah.
So you do that federally. You do education federally. You do voting federally. All these things can be administered locally. We can still have state control.
Yeah.
But the financing must be federal so that those things that we all have in common, our health, our education, the things that are good for the country, the investments to make sure we have a good economy, so that the private sector, the things that it can do very well, can do so and thrive. Yeah. But we should not be privatizing prisons. It should be difficult. It should be hard. It should be a hard choice to send people to prison.
Yeah.
And if we privatize it, it makes it easy because now there's a whole segment of the population that will make money off of it.
Exactly.
Can't be done. Can't be done.
Yeah. And, one thing that just with regards to healthcare, and I think a lot of people, gotten confused about, what HR 676, a single payer system, would do. And that is effectively the government's just picking up the bill.
Absolutely.
There will not be a change in the delivery of healthcare other than the fact that you'll actually be able to go to the doctor, and probably, the doctors will be able to do their jobs. Nurses will be able to do their jobs better because they will not be constrained, by the insanity of the insurance and the overhead related to insurance. Goes.
I can tell you what it's like. Every day that I'm in the office, I am fighting with insurance companies. I am fighting with pharmaceutical companies just to be able to get people the bare bones, basic stuff that they need. And yet we're supposed to believe that we're living in the greatest healthcare system in the world. It's not. The third leading cause of death is medical errors. That is due to for-profit. You can't tell me that means that we have the greatest healthcare in the world if almost 300,000 people die because they either couldn't access healthcare, or once they did, the people involved were so busy trying to make sure they made the most money that they forgot to make sure that they did what was in your best interest, and you resulted in death. So
I actually got an insurance story if I could share it real quick.
Please, by all means.
So I actually was not formally diagnosed as being on the spectrum, as being on the autism spectrum until I was 27.
Really?
The reason for that, part of it had to do with what was known and understood about the autism spectrum as I was growing up. But the other thing had to do with this. When I would go to see a psychiatrist or whatever, there was constraints, in terms of how much time they could spend with me, which was constrained by my insurance. So ultimately what they would do is they would spend a little bit of time with me, give, some diagnosis, give me a couple of pills and be on my way. And send me on my way. And I've been misdiagnosed with everything. And what happened when I was 27, I was living in Florida at the time. I saw a brilliant psychiatrist who didn't take insurance. I had to pay out of my own pocket. But this guy was able to. He spent several hours with me, asked me questions nobody else had asked, interviewed my family members, and came up with a diagnosis. And I was so relieved because for years it was okay, what is going on here? Why isn't the treatment working? And after that, I was able to, make changes in my life, learn more about myself, get on the right path to get where I am now. Had it not been for him, I wouldn't be running for Congress right now. The fact that it took that long, 27 years, to get an accurate diagnosis because of the way that our healthcare system works, because of the limited amount of time that, could be spent with me. Nobody should have to go through that. Nobody.
But since you brought that up, I was hoping we would get here, in talking about, the amount of help that is available. If you, I'm sure you've studied this, as I have, you know, with autism, with childcare in general, regardless of what your issue may be with your special needs child, whether it be autism, whether it be multiple sclerosis, whatever it happens to be, uh, there never seems to be enough help. There never seems to be enough. Can you talk a little bit about that and your experiences with that?
Well, I think that had it not been for my parents,
Mm-hmm.
very loving, and I consider this to be a luxury. So I've heard
Yeah.
so many horror stories about kids being abandoned by their parents or whatnot.
Yeah.
I don't think I'm not even sure I would be alive, right now, because they always gave me a safe place to go
Yeah.
when things were not going well in other aspects of my life, and they're fortunately, they were able to provide me with a good middle class, upbringing, so I didn't have to
Yeah.
worry, about being on the streets. Again, a luxury that I know that not everybody has. And I think that with regards to getting help, there definitely needs to be, investment, and more resources for special needs students. I mean, in Nevada, we are dead last in education in terms of quality outcomes, all of that stuff. And right now, there may actually be a walkout happening with some of the Clark teachers in Clark County, mirroring the like Oklahoma and Arizona and all
Oklahoma.
that. And then they're not being paid well. And there's there's money that out there that could be used to provide resources for these kids, but they're being left behind. And like I said in the beginning, depending on your circumstances when you're born in, you may be damned from the beginning. So I think that they're part of the reform needs to come within our education system. I am totally against privatizing our public school system. I'm against vouchers. I'm against ESAs. I'm against Betsy DeVos. I can't wait to go toe to toe with her on these things. So I think that there definitely needs to be that, but there also needs to be a change effectively in how our society views autism, views special needs, and all that. And I'll tell you, just to go back to my story of getting diagnosed, the thing that changed everything for me when I finally got my diagnosis and worked with the doctor that I worked with was he helped me identify my strengths. He recognized, my deficits, and all that. But he also said, okay, this is what you're good at. So let's make you even better at that. And I don't think that enough of that, especially with kids on the autism spectrum, is being done. I mean, a lot of, what we see, in the media, and whatnot, is all the negatives. But how much time is spent, with a kid that's nonverbal, for example, does this kid perhaps have any artistic ability? Does this kid, have it? Is there a way that they communicate differently? What are they good at?
God forbid the arts should actually be labeled important. If we're talking about an economy, a robust economy, what do you like to do on the weekends? You like to go to the movies. You like to eat out. You like to go to the theater. You like to go to a concert. There's an entire industry that employs millions of people around the world that would have no business whatsoever if we did not have artists. So why should we not value the arts if you value the economy? It makes no sense. And quite honestly, have you ever heard of Sir Ken Robinson? He's from England. Look him up tonight. He's on YouTube. If you look up TED Talks, he gave an incredible one about, I guess maybe about closer to 10 years now, talking about creativity and education and the way that we try, especially in this country, to cram everyone into one tiny box.
And then standardize test them to death.
Which completely robs these kids of all the potential that they could be bringing to our culture, to our economy. And we have to understand, whatever they choose to do, whether it be medicine or the arts, will, if nothing else, even if you don't value the contributions to our culture, which you should, but it will also benefit our economy, because if we can help them be artists and successful artists, successful in the way that people would understand success, financial success, then that means that they are employing people. They are employing people to help them put on their shows. They are allowing people to come and enjoy life. This is important, and we are ruining this for so many kids, whether they be autistic or not. We are wasting our potential as a culture, as a society. We want to be the great indispensable nation. We're not, unless you're in the military.
And part of the reason, I think that we're not doing that is, like I said, we're, just trying to standardize everything and, put everybody doing one thing. And you know who that benefits? The people that make the standardized tests.
Yep.
They're very, very profitable. And it has, effectively, in the name of profit, diminished creativity and, like you said, caused, harm to our economy. And I think that, just a basic change in our education system, I am against standardized testing. I have scored well on standardized tests, but I also know that, for most of them, the thing that they demonstrate the best is how well you take the test.
Exactly.
And so I am, definitely in favor of, reform for, student performance. But yeah, I think as long as we are, taking children and, trying to, make them fit, fit a stereotype of what we perceive, as normal, we are going to, continue to undermine, their potential. And as you said, it's not good for society, I mean,
it's not.
Yeah.
And this means, especially if we tackle all these different things, and I know you and I were talking about gun violence before the start of the show, and I want to talk about that in addition. But one of the things we were talking about is how such a horrific thing has multiple causes, and so many people in the discussion of gun violence want to go after usually just one thing, one aspect of it. Some people want to go after more than one, but there are so many avenues. We talk about poverty, we talk about police oppression, we talk about lack of education and economic opportunity, as well as mental health issues, as well as the prevalence and availability of weapons of war on the street. There are so many things we have to do, but if we made the investments in single-parent health care, including mental health care, and applied that to policing, have there be, maybe 50% as many social workers in the precincts as there are police officers, put them in schools, double the size of teachers and increase, the number of social workers in schools, we would be able to preventatively, get to these children while they're young and make, identify issues and solve them, God forbid. Make people's lives incredible. And it's cruel to leave it all up to parents and children themselves when, quite honestly, the deck has been stacked against them economically since the 1970s. Certainly. They don't have the time and the money to be able to do it anymore, and it's time we recognized that and did something about it.
Yeah, and as we were talking before, just going back to the gun violence, and I am not excusing what Nicholas Cruz did in part by any means whatsoever. No. But I read his story, and just reading his story, like it almost like made sense that he would have done something like that, and it's like again no sympathy for what he did, but at the same time it's like how as the wealthiest nation in the world, how do we as society, let somebody, become, like that, treat somebody, like that, give that person no avenue for help or self-improvement in any way, shape, or form, especially when we have the capacity to do so. And then, and I always go back to money, and I always find, there's some, route to money in politics here.
Oh, hell yes.
But the NRA, I don't think there is any more sinister, blatantly sinister example of how damaging money in politics is with the NRA.
Absolutely.
Politicians' pockets full of money to vote against common sense, gun control.
And I would like to point something out there. When we talk about NRA, I like to make a distinction between NRA leadership versus NRA membership. Because I know a lot of people who are in the NRA as a member, but do not adhere to people like Dana Loesch or Wayne LaPierre. They think they're idiots, and they give the NRA a bad name. So I like to make a distinction between NRA leadership versus membership. Because just like in political parties, the leadership doesn't give a fucking damn about the people that are following behind them. They have their own agenda, and you're not on it.
Yeah. And I don't. The NRA releases its membership figures from time to time. I'm not entirely sure I buy them, and I know that there's been some other questions about what they're what they consider a member to be. But I do know, at least from I've seen on Facebook, that people have gotten rid of their NRA membership, because of what the leadership is doing. And I think that, I grew up growing up, the first mass shooting that I was impacted me, that I was aware of, was Columbine. It happened when I was 17, and I was just amazed the reaction that we are seeing now, the movement by the students. None of that happened with Columbine. There was the level of intensity. There was no David Hogg or Emma Gonzalez equivalent, back in Columbine. And I've now listing those two and as two of my personal heroes. Absolutely, because I'm scared to death of them. Yeah, they are demanding. They're demanding change, and they're not going away. And the NRA, I have not seen this type of demand for accountability from the NRA and the politicians that are taking money from them ever. It would not surprise me if, depending on the outcome of the election cycle, that the Parkland shooting may be remembered as, I don't want to say the beginning of the end of the NRA necessarily, but a total diminishment of its role in politics.
Well, certainly the diminishment of its power. What I've been saying for a long time, because I know a lot of people think that the struggle is between the left and the right. And there certainly is a struggle between left and right. There's no doubt about that. But that is very difficult to pinpoint, because there's a lot of people who claim they are of the left and they're not really. At best they're center. So there's a lot of confusion about left versus right. But where I think there's clarity in the struggle is between top versus bottom, rich versus poor, oligarch versus everyone else. And so what I always say about rich people, I don't know anyone, so I can't say it to them, but I don't begrudge you your riches. It matters very much how you became rich. That matters. It matters very much what you choose to do with your riches, and it matters very much how you maintain your riches. The fact of you being rich is not important to me, but those three facts are very important. So I'm not really coming for your money.
I don't fault anybody for acquiring wealth, for good gotten gains rather than ill gotten gains. For good gotten gains, more power to you. And there are, there's a group, patriotic millionaires, out there who, are, I don't know too much about it, but I've seen, videos of people, that have money and, are promoting a more liberal economic perspective, or left economic perspective. So I don't fault, like yourself, I don't fault, somebody, for earning money in any way, shape, or form. Sure. But like you said, where they got the money from and what they're doing with it.
How they hang on to it
is a whole nother story.
Yeah. So I'm not so much coming.
But money doesn't necessarily, corrupt in any way, in any way, shape, or form. But corrupt individuals who have access to money, will do horrible things.
Well, because money is not the problem. I'm not coming for their money. I'm coming for their power. Because money is not the problem. Fear is the problem. Fear that there's not going to be enough, fear
Right.
that I might have everything taken away from me, fear
Right.
that people might take it from me. And we
Mm.
see it all the time. We see it in the gun debate. Government's coming to take your guns.
Yeah.
Government's coming to take your money. Government's
And
coming to take, come and take.
then what the NRA does is they point at people like me with
Yeah.
mental health issues and then say, I'm the problem. I have no
Absolutely.
history of violence, whatsoever. And it's like, yeah, this is totally a mental health problem. Has nothing to do with you can walk into a store, and buy an AR-15 and then go down the 7-Eleven and buy a Slurpee along with it.
Yeah.
and then they point. And I tweeted at Trump a while back, and it was after the shooting here in Las Vegas, the October shooting, and I said, well, Mr. Trump, if this is a mental health problem, then surely you will support the allocation of resources to provide, treatment and all that stuff, for those with mental health issues, right?
Nope.
He never got back to me. I'm not sure why.
Let me think if I can come up with a reason why. But again, it's really about fear, and we talk about it a lot. We talk about war a lot. We talk about fear a lot. We need to talk more about love.
Yes.
We need to talk more about how can we come together. Where do we have intersectional interests? And I think everyone would agree that if everyone having healthcare, if you take away the economics of it, just don't worry about the economics for the purposes of the conversation. Do you believe that everyone should have health care? I believe that most everyone in the country, including Republicans, would say yes. Do you think everyone should get high quality education? This doesn't mean college. Some people will want to go to trade school. We should be able to make it such that whatever you, the student, want to pursue, you should be able to pursue. But should that be a right for everyone? Everyone would say yes. Should we have clean food, clean water, clean environment for everyone to enjoy? Everyone would say yes. And I think if we can actually start talking about the economics and the fact that the federal government in the richest country in the world, we can afford all of that. All of that. The only thing that hangs people back and makes some people not support it is because they think it's not sustainable. Yeah. So we need to go after those people and teach them that it is not only possible, it is moral, and it is sustainable. And you will be the beneficiary of everything that comes afterwards, with increased prosperity, with increased economic output, with increased security, because we will have taken away people's wants. You take away their wants, you take away their need for crime. There is so much that we can do if we include everyone.
And that humanist perspective,
yes,
which detailed there, is what I'm hoping to bring to in Washington.
Yes. God love you.
Yeah, and again, just going back to Bernie Sanders, because I love Bernie Sanders.
Absolutely.
It really was not until him that I, finally put it together and was like, yes, this is all possible. That we can create a government that looks out for its people. We can, ensure that everybody has health care, that everybody has the option to go to college if they want. We can ensure that people who are working are paid fairly. We can ensure that regardless of your race, your country of origin, your sexual orientation, your gender identity, that your human rights, your basic rights as a human being, are protected and preserved.
Absolutely.
And, when 2016 after the 2016 election happened, I saw a period of I saw despair, but I also saw hope. I saw hope that the things that Bernie Sanders was promoting, that we were going to go in a totally crazy direction with Trump. That maybe these other ideas that had been shoved away, that had been ignored, would gain strength, gain traction. And HR 676, now it's been introduced every session since 2003. It now has more supporters now than ever. And the Senate bill that Bernie introduced, this is closer than ever to becoming a reality. And you got other bills, that are on the people's platform, the College for All Act, the Raise the Wage Act. These are actually being paid attention to, and they're not like, I mean, people are still dismissing them as crazy, but there are more people who are saying, no, this is not crazy, that we can create a humane government. In fact, that's what the government is supposed to be, humane.
And it's interesting when you say that, because you're talking about the people that have been saying, no, it's pie in the sky, it's not going to happen. They're not saying it's a bad idea. They're saying it can't happen. We have to do it a different way. But what's interesting about what you said, and what to me is the hope of 2016, is that prior to 2016, there was a very, very, very small number of people that were doing the talking. A very small number of people that were doing the work. You had pretty much, the mainstream media and the people in Washington, and that was it. And with the oligarchs, behind the scenes pulling all the strings. And there were some activists out there who were trying to get heard, but they were screaming into the void because everyone else was off, watching American Idol and working their third job because they had to, But because of the shit show that was the 2016 election cycle, plus the outcome of the final election itself, the hope is that people woke up. You pretty much nailed it on the head. People have been saying no, 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 and they're still saying no, but there are more people now saying yes. This is why I think this is the year, this is the cycle to end incrementalism, to end pragmatism, to take that Overton window, crumple it up, throw it away, because the Overton window simply describes a set of policies that are possible when a very, very, very small number of people are the ones involved in trying to create it. They don't go for the gold. They don't reach for the brass ring. But if everyone is awake and we all want the same things, we don't accept the bullshit of you can't pay for that, there's no money for that. We don't accept that anymore. The Overton window is blown up. The people that are doing the talking are now numerous. And we are all saying in one loud voice, thou shalt give us single-payer health care and free college education and 100% green energy so that we can have, air to breathe for our children. You're going to clean up Flint, Michigan, and every other community that has soiled water, done for profit. You will do all this. You will make sure the internet is a utility because it has become such a ubiquitous part of our life. We can't live without it.
I am for net neutrality, by the way. I am very, very pro net neutrality. And, it's if it were not for net neutrality, if it were rather not for independent media like Real Progressive, the Young Turks, etc., I wouldn't have a campaign. We have relied so much, in the beginning on social media in terms of getting our name out. And that's something that has not really, I don't think, been talked about with the net neutrality debate. And that is like, insurgent or outsider candidates will be at a horrible disadvantage, which is what establishment likes in that regard, because most of us across this country have been relying in one way or another on the internet to get our messages out. And without that, without a free and open internet, especially considering how dependent we are on it now, democracy dies.
Absolutely. We have to rise up. With that, I want you to give you a minute because we're coming up on 9 o'clock. I want to save time for Savage Joy. She's coming up at 9. Stay tuned for that. If you want to give your final pitch to the audience.
So if you want to learn more about me, you can go to www.weissfornevada.com. You can also follow me on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram at Weiss for Nevada. And what I am hoping with my campaign, and perhaps hopefully I will inspire some of you out there to run for office at some point, is, 10, 20 years ago, a person on the autism spectrum running for public office would have been laughed, out of the room, out of the country, whatever. And people told me that, this is something that I could never do. Well, guess what? I'm doing it now.
That's right.
If anybody has told you, has tried to silence your voice or discourage you, from becoming active in the political realm because of some difference you have, ignore them, shut them off, make your voice heard, run for office, get involved with your community, volunteer, speak out, because everybody deserves a seat at the table. And we all have our differences, but we are all human.
Yes.
We are all Americans, and we deserve basic human rights, and we deserve to be heard.
My man. Ladies and gentlemen, Michael Weiss, running in Nevada's 3rd Congressional District. Thank you so much for coming on to Real Progressives and talking with me tonight. I really appreciate it.
Thank you very much.
Wish everyone a wonderful evening.
Thank you very much for having me on.
My pleasure. I'm going to play this song on the way out. Everyone, I love you all very much. Take care of each other. Peace.
Peace.
Well, apparently I'm not playing this song on the way out. No. There we go.
There we go.
Peace out, everyone.